This is Inside the Americas, coming up. Chile is set to vote on a new constitution to replace the current one that dates back to the Pinochet era. That new draft would curb abortion rights and enshrine other tenets of far-right Catholic morality. Analysis with Sofia Perez on the way. Then Argentina devalues the peso by more than 50%. That's part of electric shock therapy by new President Javier Milei to kickstart the country's struggling economy. And Harvard President Claudine Gay keeps her job despite mounting controversy over her appearance before the U.S. Congress. That's after she failed to say whether students calling for the genocide of Jewish people would be disciplined. I'm Jeannie Godula. This weekend, Chile will vote on whether or not to finally replace the country's constitution. The current one dates back to 1980 and the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. The referendum, December 17th, comes after a 4-year political saga that started after the country's worst unrest in decades left at least 30 people being killed. But for campaigners hoping for a more liberal document with equal rights for women or Indigenous peoples, this latest draft constitution is a big disappointment.
Chile's long road to changing its constitution began more than 3 years ago. A series of protests led to a referendum in 2020, in which 80% voted for replacing the Pinochet-era text. In May 2021, Chileans elected a majority left-leaning body to write a new constitution. But just a year later, more than 61% of voters rejected the draft, deeming it to be too radical. It was a tough knock for leftist President Gabriel Boric. Boric had argued that the document would usher in a new progressive era and expressed his intention to launch a new process. This time, experts elected by Parliament agreed on key points to be the basis of a new constitution. Then, a council of 50 members, elected by popular vote and dominated by the far right, worked on a new proposal. A proposal that threatens access to abortion and makes no mention of Indigenous Chileans. According to opinion polls, the population could once again reject the draft constitution. This would mean that the current text, inherited from Pinochet in 1980, would remain in force.
We're going to take a closer look at this now with Latin America specialist Sofia Perez. Sofia, welcome to Inside the Americas. Thanks for being with us. What would happen if this constitution isn't approved? Where would things go from there?
This government has announced that there will be no other procedure for a new constitution. So this is our last chance to replace that one from 1918. There's an environment of fear. What will happen after, and some instability about the economic future. But I think that for the moment, the worst is that coming back for the actual constitution. And then maybe in the future, we hope that we will have another opportunity.
Sofia, what are people most upset about with this new proposed constitution?
Well, there are many things. For instance, this new constitution was supposed to reunite the country, to make some kind of agreement, a political agreement, a social agreement for our foundations. But this one is very less integrative of the population than the one that was presented in last year, and it was refused, sadly. So in this one, there are many rights that they are no longer present, like women's rights for concerning reproductive rights, on rights concerning the environment, like for example water. That is the water is a resource that is private and not public. In Chile, that's one of the only country in the world that have this kind of system. And there are some other aspects like the education. So this new constitution benefits more the companies, the private, the enterprise, the corporate part of the country, rather than the people.
Right, because the last constitution that failed over a year ago was actually put together in part by the people. So what changed? That one did not pass, but how did we get something so different, so far to the right this time?
Well, this one started with a base document made by a group of experts designed by the two chambers, the Chamber of Deputies and the Chamber of the Senators. And these people, wrote this elementary constitution that was afterwards modified by this Asamblea Constituyente, but for a group of conciliars, advisors for the new constitutions that were elected, but there was not much people's participation for voting, and that means that the right was stronger, and they are have more representation for the redaction of this new law. That's why they are so far away from each other, from the two different models.
Sofia, just to wrap up, why do you think it's so hard to get something that everyone seems to agree needs to be changed through?
Wow, that's a really complicated question. The principal problem, I think, that's the division of the country is very bipolar, like very divided from the beginning. We need to make a reconciliation to very close all this period from the dictatorship, because we never had real justice. It's been 15 years and we still have people that they are free after all the crime. So there's a cap that we need to find, and after that maybe we can talk about this new agreement of a society agreement and a political agreement. But there are many things to change, like, for example, the social inequalities, social economic inegalities that are the base of this unhappiness of the people. No?
Sofia, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us. Sofia Perez, thank you. Now, our number of the week is 50. This week, Argentina said it would weaken its peso by over 50%. That's part of the new economic shock therapy put in place just 2 days after Javier Milei was sworn in as Argentina's new president. Now, that's due to put a big strain on Argentines' purchasing power in a country where 40% of the population lives below the poverty line. Also on the way for them, deep cuts to public spending and transport and energy subsidies. Those moves in hopes of tackling the country's triple-digit inflation that's now at 143%. This week in the U.S., 700 professors at Harvard University turned out to support their president, Claudine Gay. She and the heads of two other prestigious universities, MIT and Penn, are under fire over testimony they gave to the U.S. Congress about anti-Semitism on campus. Gay was slammed for refusing to specifically say whether or not calling for the genocide of Jews violated Harvard's code of conduct. The scandal forced Penn president Elizabeth McGill to resign, but thanks to the support of her staff, Dr. Gay is holding on to her job for now. Our team on the ground sent us this report from Harvard, one of the many college campuses to be rocked by fallout from the Israel-Hamas war.
Since October 7th, anti-Semitic incidents have increased by 400% in the United States, including at Harvard. Jacob Miller is president of the Hillel Campus Group, the largest Jewish university organization in the United States. He's worried by the current climate.
There have been many posts that have been deeply anti-Semitic on Instagram and on this anonymous social media app called SideChat. In order to sign in, you have to use a Harvard email. So I know that everyone who's posting on it is a Harvard affiliate, but I don't know exactly who it is. So there was this one post that said, "Now I fully understand how Jews control the media." There was another post right after October 7th that said, "Let him cook." It's a very strange experience to then be expected to kind of go back to campus and to classes and to clubs with these people who've posted these things unapologetically.
Faced with criticism and pressure from its donors, Harvard has finally created a committee to combat anti-Semitism, but no group to combat Islamophobia, which is also on the rise. A few weeks ago, this truck circles the campus with the faces and names of pro-Palestinian students to denounce their activism. But that hasn't stopped them from organizing daily events in the university grounds, such as this installation depicting life in Gaza.
You have home, you have school, you have hospital, and what it does is it tries to show you that Palestinians, the people being killed every single day in Gaza, are normal people.
Fawaz Malki studies history at Harvard. He's American, born of Palestinian parents, and therefore directly affected by the war in Gaza. He too feels abandoned by the university.
Anti-Palestinian racism, Islamophobia is not being confronted at this university in the manner that it should be. There's plenty of students who wear hijabs, who have, had their hijab pulled. They've been spat at. People who wear keffiyehs, a Palestinian cultural scarf, a symbol that stands for Palestinian liberation, who've been told there's no justification for terrorism. And it's heartbreaking because those are things that our grandparents wore, their grandparents wore, long before any sort of terrorist group that you want to blame ever existed.
Harvard and several other universities are now under federal investigation for anti-Semitism and Islamophobia under the Civil Rights Act. The Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, or origin at any institution receiving funding from the U.S. Department of Education.
That report from our Washington correspondent, Fraser Jackson. Well, that wraps it up for this Inside the Americas. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week for all the news from north to south.
It may be the world's most famous transmission tower, but it's what we put in to the France 24 debate that makes it unique. Join us at that crossroads where differing perspectives meet to argue the point about the stories that matter to you. The debate here on France 24 and France24.com.